we have got a classic character profile this week, which is inspired by David's plan this week to kill himself in some kind of fiery automobile inferno, because that
I
is
thought you were going
how...
to say autumn.
No.
Is that an orange car?
Automobile inferno. No, this is another character that ended in much the same way. Don Brennan is going to be the focus of our classic character profile this week, who is someone that was in the show when I started watching, and I got to see him kind of unravelling into madness in his final few years. Not a character that Gemma has ever seen on screen, is it? But hopefully we can inform
Conjure
you
some
about
images
it.
in my brain
We can-
that convince me in 10 years' time that I did watch every episode with him in.
Yeah, exactly. That is the point of these. So for Gemma, who hasn't heard of, he has
Excuse
heard
me.
of him, who hasn't seen Don before, and for any listeners that don't know much about Don, because he is not as fondly remembered as many other kind of soap villains, this is him, and a bit like the Maxine one we did a few weeks ago. It was quite difficult to uncover information about Don online. The Corriepedia page is a little threadbare on him, and there's some a bit better stuff on Corrie.net, but a lot of the information from this came from a 40 years of Coronation Street book, so we managed to piece some bits together. This did come from Corriepedia, though, as it always does every week. His stats, and Gemma is going to start us off by telling us all about Don's info, his main facts. Gemma,
What, the facts? The facts about
give
Don.
us his Don fact file.
Don fact number 1. He was born on the 30th of November, 1937. Don
Good
fact
fact.
2. He died on the 8th of October, 1997. Good month. Don fact 3.
For births and deaths.
His parents, Michael and Bridget Brennan.
Good name, Michael. Nice.
Don fact 4. He's got a sister called Maureen Brennan. Don fact 5. He was married twice to Pat O'Connor.
Oh, before time.
1958, and Ivy Tilsley in 1988. Extra fact.
You've run out of numbers
Can't
now. What
remember.
comes after 5 again?
You didn't even know what number
I
I was
didn't know
on
what
then.
number it was.
Right, he had
This is Don Fact
3
6.
children: Margaret Bell, Eileen Brennan, and Gordon Brennan. His first appeared on the 7th of September 1987. Last appeared on the 8th of October 1997. That's right, he wasn't a ghost like Vera. He was in 735 episodes. He was the 69th most featured character. He was played by Jeff Hinsliff.
Good facts, good Don facts. Don, don, don.
Or it could be Geoff Hinsliff.
It's not.
Or Hinsliff.
Now, you might have heard of Jeff
Hinsliff.
Hinsliff because he's been in some other things.
Hinsliff.
I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't
Hinsleaf?
know, honestly. He's a RADA trained
He was
actor,
trained
don't
at
you
RADA,
know?
darling.
And he made his TV debut in Z Cars, or is it Z? Is it Z Cars?
Cars.
I've never seen this show. He was in a few other shows before Coronation Street. He was in it's kind of a load of famous sort of 70s-ish programmes, wasn't it? The Professionals, Juliet Bravo. He was even in Doctor Who for 2 episodes, the classic Doctor Who, that is, of course. And he had been in Coronation Street twice before. He played a guy called Vincent in 1963, and then in 1977 he was back playing somebody called Eric Bailey, who was a scaffolding director. He had arranged to go on a date with Renee Bradshaw, whilst Bet and Les Fox, who I think was his partner in crime, they were going to go on a double date together anyway. So what's his name? Eric and Les ditched Renee and Bet so they could have robbed the corner shop, do a runner, but they were arrested again a few days later for drink driving, and that was the last we saw of Jeff on Coronation Street up until for another 10 years, because in 1987 he was invited to come back for a more permanent role in Corrie by Bill Podmore.
And he said, yes, please.
Yes, please, I'd love to do that. Bill Podmore, who was the producer at the time, he'd worked with Jeff on Brass before as well, because Podmore had been the producer of that. So, Jeff came back, third incarnation, as Don Brennan, the taxi driver. He met Ivy Tilsley. I think this is one of the first things that happened to him in 1987, when she was a fare of his in his taxi. They seemed to click quite well. They were both Catholics. They both had dead spouses. I think Bert had died if not that year, but 1 or 2 years before. So Ivy was freshly widowed, and they had a bit of a connection together, and they started a relationship. And by the end of the next year, 1988, they were already married. They got married at St Luke's Catholic Church, and they went to Corfu on their honeymoon.
That's quite advanced.
Oh, I know, for the 1988 going to Corfu. So
What's wrong with Blackpool?
obviously, if you marry Ivy Tilsley, you've also kind of you almost married to Brian as well, at least while he was still alive, because she was a bit of an obsessive mother, and but sadly for them, he fell out with Brian when they got back from Corfu, because Brian wanted cheap taxi fares, and Don was like, no, not your dad, and pay you way like everyone else. But it was all right, because Brian was dead the next year, so even if they had that little falling out, got out that one. Yeah,
that's what I do if I'm arguing with someone. I just wait for them to die, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. Right, 1989, Mike Baldwin wins Don's taxi in a poker game, and then they obviously needed it back, so he says Ivy's got to stump up £1,000 to get it back. That
sounds a very Mike thing to do, isn't it? Like, he can see he's got this taxi off of this poor family, and Ivy, I assume, was working with Mike at the time as well, and he's still like, no, I want that, you can pay me £1,000, even though Mike was mega rich anyway.
No.
Rich
Well, how
the
do you
rich
think
get richer.
Exactly.
But the way that Don got the money, well, I think Ivy paid for this taxi, but luckily Don came into a bit of money himself. He was given a greyhound called Harry's Luck in exchange for a £45 taxi fare, and it soon turned out that this Harry's Luck was pregnant, and she gave birth to 5 little puppies, and Ivy loved being a mummy again and having the puppies around, but
I want that.
Don sold them for £800, and then he was able to use that and a little bit more to get the car back off of Mike. No, they'd already had the car back off Mike. Sorry,
she paid him back.
He paid Ivy back. Yeah, exactly. So wasn't Don a nice guy at the beginning? Everybody, and he was also very supportive of Ivy and whatever when Brian got stabbed later that year.
1990, again a mishap with a taxi.
Taxi woes.
You should get a job that doesn't require a car, like everyone else. It got stolen by joyriders, and then it got used in a hit and run, and the police thought it was him that did it. But while he's out and about, he sees one of the thieves, gives chase, and starts beating him up. Then he gets arrested, which is really rude, and charged with assault and charged £55. And then the worst part of the whole thing is that Rosie appeared in it. She was birthed in the back of the taxi. Yeah,
end of the year, Rosie gets born in the back there. Yeah, hope Sally cleaned up afterwards. Yeah. I don't know what Don was particularly like back then, because from what I gather from these notes about him so far, he was generally a good guy when he came into it, and I don't know how much of a shock and a surprise it was for the viewers at the time when he started beating up this thief. Because by the end of it, Don was a complete lunatic, and maybe this was the first signs that he was a little bit unhinged.
It's like, your car's only, you just got a car back, and then a bunch of gits come and steal it.
Yeah, that's just bad luck, isn't it?
Very bad luck.
Well, marriage to Ivy Tilsley was not the easiest thing. She was a little bit obsessed with her dead husband and her dead son, and she kind of drove Don to look elsewhere for an easier life and a bit of romance. And
tell you what, if you want to look elsewhere for an easy life, don't have an affair.
Oh yeah, it never works.
Only complicates things.
He found solace with Julie Dewhurst, who was a barmaid at the Rover's Return, who I don't know whether I've ever heard of before. But anyway, she ended up breaking off the relationship, and he
didn't take it well.
He didn't take it well, did he? A bit like David's not taking Kylie's death very well, because he crashed his car trying to kill himself.
What an idiot.
He survived, but his left foot had to be amputated.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but well done for the show for actually sticking with it.
I just say that's the best possible
losing
outcome.
your foot?
Because, Michael, use your brain. They always put the right foot out in shoe shops for you to try it on.
Do they?
If you'd lost your left foot, if you'd lost your right foot, you'd never be able to steal sample shoes. But as it is, you just try them on and hop on out of there, and what are they going to do about it? They probably never even sell those shoes.
Okay, I think you're probably right. I don't know whether Don's anything like me, but shoe shopping isn't one of the...
Well, Imagine
list of. It's not on my priority list. Really.
No, but imagine if somebody took half of the work out of it. Literally. Wouldn't you be happy?
He did. He got a fake foot though. He still had to wear two shoes.
That's bad luck. That is. He should have waited a few years and had one of them blades put in.
Oh yeah, that would have been good, wouldn't it? That I would have.
I don't think you could drive a taxi with a blade.
I think you're probably right. Well, good on Coronation Street for actually giving somebody a permanent disfigurement.
Yeah,
they actually had to
good old permanent disabilities is what we like. It's what we want to see. People maimed.
Well, we were saying earlier that like when people have whatever issues, like the kidney problems or the brain problems or the epilepsy or the allergies or whatever, they only like to bring them out when there's a convenient plot point. But you can't really hide the fact that a character's only got one foot. And so he had to spend the next...
You don't see their feet that often.
You don't, but you do see them walking around, and he had to spend the next 5 years that he was on the programme limping.
Right, let's look at this Coronation Street as an ongoing project. Let's get one of the characters horribly disfigured in the next year. And can I suggest a topical, recent event, which would be a nice thing to include? The gorilla that was recently let loose in London Zoo. Why don't we have a nice family
I need to find out what
outing?
happened with that.
He just got tranquilised and put back in.
Did he? That was the most exciting thing ever. When that popped up on my phone, that was the gorilla on the loose. That was like the best. Then I forgot all about it.
The most exciting news day that we've had recently that isn't just going on about Clinton and Trump.
Yeah.
Because not only did that happen, but also Tesco stopped stocking Marmite. And I was so rattled, I actually had Marmite on toast for lunch.
Did you?
Yeah.
I wondered how that was doing out of the cupboard. So anyway, you think that a gorilla should escape from Weatherfield Zoo and maim
rip
somebody?
Someone's face off.
Any candidates?
Rip someone's face off.
Yeah.
And then you can bring them back as a different actor and explain it properly.
Ah. So maybe next time they want to recast a child actor or something.
Just have their face ripped off by a gorilla.
But... it's got to be a permanent, proper disfigurement.
No, but that's fine. You just draw like a red line around their jawline.
Has Todd still got his scar? Because I remember when he first got it...
Do you want to hear a horrible story?
No. Does Todd still got his scar? Because
yeah, he does. I saw it the other day. He's got a line here. They just put like a white line.
It's not as bad as it used to be.
No, but I think it's good. That's what happens to scars. He probably puts Bio-Oil on it every night.
I do like the fact that they've given him that and they're going to kind of have to stick with it forever. But it makes me wonder whether they'll ever do something as severe as they did with Don again and have like having to walk with a limp for the rest of your time on the show. That is what if you forget, or what if you limp with the wrong foot or something?
Dear. Well, this is the thing, back in those days you didn't have to do so many episodes, so I mean it's going to be impossible.
Rehearsal time and everything.
It's going to be impossible for them to do 6 episodes with a fake limp.
It does make me think of like, is you get people where you're told you'll never walk again or whatever, and maybe one of these days they should actually have a character end up in a wheelchair.
Well, they go,
good.
You're never going to walk again, and they go, whatever, and they go, no, really,
no, really this time.
I know.
And they're like, you mean so I'm just going to be off the show for a few months, and they're not actually going to show me recovery?
You're really going to be forever affected by this permanently.
Blimey.
Whatever.
It would be interesting to... Can you imagine if that happened to some, like, kind of glamorous, like, say it was Michelle or something, or... I mean, that'd completely change her, wouldn't it? I mean,
well, if her face was ripped off by a gorilla, it would.
Change her even more. If it was Steve, I mean, he spends half his time sitting down anyway.
Are you trying to say his face looks like it's already
No,
been
I'm talking
ripped
about
off
if he
by a
needs... If he has his wheelchair.
I really think that's a good idea, and they should not waste my idea.
Okay, well, we'll look out for that one. We'll send that one in. Or, you remember on Biker Grove where gets blinded?
Yes,
I never watched Biker Grove, but I do know that...
I watched that.
Was it Ants that got...
It was Ant or Deck. And it was paintball.
Yeah.
Mishap.
And was he in the show for
off.
quite a long time after that as a blind character? I got a feeling it was, but I don't know.
Groove!
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a children's TV programme, everybody who doesn't remember this or know about it.
Where was it set in?
Newcastle, yeah, as you could tell from Gemma's accent.
That's my accent.
But yeah, he was...
Groove!
He was blinded, and I think it would be fascinating to have a character be blinded.
Oh my God.
It would.
It would be, but it would be stupid as well, don't you think?
No, it wouldn't. It would be a bold move. I wonder if other soaps have done that.
No, they wouldn't be able to...
Why not?
It'd be difficult because it's so political these days. You can't... It's very, very political to cast a character who is disabled or has like any kind of thing that's perceived as not being as good. You know,
A minority.
Well, like say, for example, even having Todd playing a gay character.
Yeah.
Could be controversial.
I'm sure some people could be offended by that.
But having a character become disabled is a different matter.
So if they actually blinded the actor, then that would be okay.
That's the only way they can really be morally upstanding and doing it. I mean, some people are method actors, so they might go through.
Take one for the team, yeah.
Anyway, look. To think about, because you probably would get some awards for it.
I bet you would.
Remember, let's not forget the sacrifice made by the actress who played Lauren, who had her hair cut off.
Oh yeah, that was a permanent disability. Hair doesn't grow back, does it?
Imagine, no, it doesn't. Never the same. Imagine if she had really gone further with that and let David blind her with a pair of hairdressing scissors.
Oh yeah, that would have been.
That would have been a very good.
Correct it behind us, hairdressing scissors in the eye.
That would have been a good scene.
Or he could have like tipped a load of, what's the stuff that they cleanse the hairdressing scissors in, the antibacterial dip.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know. They don't do that.
The barbicide.
They don't make a massive deal of disinfecting the combs in a women's salon for some reason.
He could have tipped us a vat of barbicide over the top of Lauren, and then she could have been disfigured like the Joker from the first Batman film, and obviously stayed in as the main character with her hideous disfigurements. I'd have liked that.
Like the Penguin or something.
Yeah, Penguin will do. Probably got a variety of Batman villains that you could choose from that have had permanent things happen to them.
Well, what happened? That's what kind of happened to Poison Ivy.
Yeah, exactly.
She was in a laboratory disaster or whatever.
Yeah. They need a good old proper supervillain in Coronation Street, because after Pat Phelan, the only way you can go is to have a classic supervillain.
Well, why don't they just get Pat Phelan bitten by a spider to become an evil Spider-Man, or alternatively, have his face ripped off by a gorilla, because I don't want to waste that idea.
I don't want Phelan to have his face ripped off by a gorilla. I want it to be someone who deserves it.
Do you remember in
character I really don't like.
Do you remember in Batman when the Joker, when he was played by Jack Nicholson, had his went into the surgery and had his face all wrapped up like a mummy?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They could do that. They could do that with all of the characters and have them peel it off and go, oh.
The mirror. Anyway, we're talking about...
Why don't they do any of these ideas?
We're talking about Don Brennan, if you hadn't forgotten, if you'd forgotten about that.
Every week we come out with these brilliant gold ideas, okay, which are all A+ ideas. I would give them 3 ticks. All of these ideas are great. No, they hardly ever steal any of them. The only ones they've stolen so far are making a gym.
Yeah, and even that, I'm not sure whether they got it from us, to be fair.
Of course they did. No one else would have thought that.
Let's go back to Don, shall we?
At all.
We've last left Don with his foot off, and people are probably wondering, is he okay after that?
No, he's not.
He's not okay.
Because he's got to buy the other shoe as well, apparently.
Okay. In his hospital bed, he tells Ivy he doesn't want anything to do with her. He's fed up with her, going on about Brian and Bert and stuff all the time. Call it a day there. But it didn't last long, because he moves back in with her by the end of the year. Because she turns into an alcoholic, so he moves back in with her to try and prevent her going further down that path. But he insists that they are leading separate lives; they're not proper husband and wife anymore. His next romantic conquest, his attempted romantic conquest, is Denise Osborne, a hairdresser. And she was showing a bit of sympathy to Don, saying, "Oh, you've only got 1 foot, that's a bit sad." And he thinks that means, "Oh, you've only got 1 foot, want to go to the bedroom?" But no, she just wants to be friends, and a bit offended when he thinks that she's trying to take things a bit further. So what does he do? He ends up giving her a load of malicious, anonymous and a bit raunchy phone calls to her to try and freak her out, because that's what you do when you fancy someone, isn't it?
So I do. I phone them up and go, "What clothes your pants?"
Yeah. She later finds out that it was him that was doing it, and then she's just disgusted by this, as was Ivy. But even so, Don and Ivy, because of this somehow, and I couldn't find the details of why, decided that maybe they should give things another go. And so by 1993, the end, they were back together again. At some point in the year, and I don't know when it happened, Don did manage to get lucky with Bette Lynch somehow. Bette Gilroy, I think she was back then. I don't really know what happened there, but Nice one, Don. 1994, Gemma. What happened in Don's life?
Well, Ivy moved to a religious retreat.
This is after Lynn Perry
Brilliant.
had her trout pout incident, and they had to quickly remove her from the show.
And Don grew closer to his step-grandson Nicky Platt.
Oh, little Nicky.
Convincing him to stop smoking, naughty, but he let him drink lager.
Oh,
Weird. Weird
is
decision.
it's like David letting Max drive the car, and
I wouldn't equate...
let children do anything.
Well, you know, can you really stop them? I mean, you can't punish them these days. I mean, if you whack them around the edge, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
So
set a gorilla on them, then you get in trouble.
Oh, people always moaning about it. Oh, why is this child's face falling off?
Anyway,
Nicky moves in with him at number 5 after a row with Martin.
Yeah, so Nick and Don were quite friends then. 1995. It turns out that Ivy died on her religious retreat, so that was a bit sad. And also sad was the fallout from that, because Don and Nick had a bit of a Barney over ownership of the house, because I think, wasn't it that Ivy wanted Nick to have the house, but only if he changes his name to Tilsley, which is why he is now Nick Tilsley and not Nick Platt. But anyway, him and Nick fell out over this, and from that point on, Don's relationship with the rest of the Platt clan was fairly frosty. But never mind, because he found another girlfriend by the end of the year, Josie Clark, a doctor's receptionist. Got into a relationship. She moved in with him at number 5, and then they bought the garage together, MVB Motors, which was Mike Vernon Baldwin's old garage.
Kind of like DIY denim.
Yes. Mike had wanted to get rid of this garage because it was going under, and I think, if I remember rightly, he left a fake valuation out on a desk somewhere that Josie could see, and she was like, wow, this is a bargain, let's get it. But then it turns out that things go a bit sour for them in 1996. Garage goes under. Josie leaves Don because she'd been kept out of the loop a bit, I think, about how serious the situation was, and he also blamed her for trusting Mike's fake valuation. So that relationship didn't really work, and that is when Kevin bought the garage, and he's had it ever since. Now, Don went in to start a fight with Mike in the Rovers, but he got his arse thoroughly kicked. The Mike and Don rivalry was bested only by the Ken and Mike rivalry, but quite close. Mike had many enemies. What else happened in 1996? He lost his driving licence. That sucks if you're a taxi driver, really, doesn't it? After he was caught drink driving.
It's a bit... You imagine if you get into a taxi and the guy goes, "There's the keys."
Yeah, I'm lending you my car.
I'll just make sure you don't crash it.
And then, yet again, he tried to kill himself by locking himself in the garage with the car exhaust on, but he was rescued, so he failed yet again in his suicide attempts.
I don't really know if we should be making fun of people for failing to commit suicide.
Yeah.
I think we should encourage it.
What? Encourage failure? Well, I certainly hope David is a big failure next week.
Yeah, me too.
Ashley Peacock was Don's lodger in 1996, and that's quite funny for me because those two characters in my head don't really overlap, because Don was a bit of the old guard and Ashley was kind of a newer character, and it's funny to think that they had a couple of years together then. 1997, though, was Don's final year on the street, wasn't it, Gemma?
1997, yeah. He became obsessed with Mike Baldwin, and then he set fire to the factory, which he thought he was winning the argument, which normally you would win an argument if you set fire to someone's factory, but it did him a favour because it destroyed evidence of Mike trying to scam Quebec, which is Stephen Reed's company. Yeah,
all the evidence went up in smoke. So Mike was crowing the fact that Don had done him a big favour. I remember a scene where I can't remember what it was. I think Don was trying to. Either Don was wearing a wire and he was trying to get Mike to admit that he was scamming this Quebec company, or Mike was wearing a wire and he was trying to get Don to admit that he burnt the factory down, but I can't remember which one it was. But he also tried to frame Ashley for the factory fire as well, and also he kidnapped Alma Baldwin, Mike's wife. I think they were still married then, I can't remember. Drove her into the canal, Richard Hillman style, but they both survived that. So what's this? Don's third suicide attempt that he's failed at. He was arrested for attempted murder Yeah, and then this is after this he tried to frame Ashley for the factory fire. So yeah, bit of a failure there. And I remember that was a really exciting episode. He had Alma in the back of the taxi, and I think most of the episode was just them kind of screaming through the night, and he was ranting on about how he's going to get Mike back for this, and
I'll get you,
yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, exciting stuff. But sadly, things turned even sourer for Don by the end of the year. He was diagnosed with cancer, went into hospital where he made his peace with Gail and Alma, which is lovely. But he escaped after he was released from hospital, he escaped police custody, whacked Mike over the head with a banister or something like that, tied him up at the factory. Mike escaped, and so Don tried to run Mike over. He got in, I think he stole Mike's car, drove it at Mike, missed somehow, and then ended up crashing into the fiery duct, perishing
Fiery duct?
Viaduct.
Oh, the fiery duct.
Perishing in a flaming inferno. And I remember that happening, and I thought that was a good death on Coronation Street. That's one of the ones that kind of stands out to me. Good little stunt.
Yeah, nice death.
But back in the kind of the mid to late 90s, when things like that didn't happen so much, I assume by this point Brian Park was in charge, and kind of trying to get the ratings up. But yeah, that was a good death for Don. And finally, at last, he was able to kill himself successfully. So, good on him.
Well, you know, you have a dream, you set out to achieve that dream, and people can see quite clearly that you have achieved your dreams.
Yeah. He just wasn't sadly able to take down Mike Baldwin with him, but you can't
win them all.
You can't win them all, no.
No.
And Mike was dead like 10 years later anyway. Right, and that was the story of Don.
That was it, and can we just emphasise that this is a fictional character, so we're allowed be flippant
about his
demise.
Yeah.
So
well, you got to be flippant about the demise of a villain in Coronation Street, as little as a villain as he was, because he doesn't particularly stand out to me and probably lots of other Corrie viewers as being one of the classic villains. If you think of Corrie villains, you think of Alan Bradley first, and then pretty massive gap until Richard Hillman comes along, and then there's a string of them like the Tony Gordons and obviously Pat Phelons and everything. But I just wonder why Don isn't ever considered as one of the major Corrie villains. I suppose I wonder whether it's anything to do with the fact that he didn't actually kill anybody, and to properly go down in Corrie villain history you've got to be a murderer. I mean, although actually Alan didn't kill anybody, but I mean Tony did, Richard did. Phelan hasn't still yet. I wonder whether Phelan needs to make his first kill to be, properly up there on the pedestal of Corrie villains.
You make your mark so that people know you're a badass.
Yeah, we already know that about Phelan, but maybe he just needs that as like a cherry on the top, which is why maybe he could be the one behind Vinny's demise that we've been predicting. I don't know. Jeff Hinsliff had a couple of other minor acting roles after Corrie. He was in Hetty Wainthropp Investigates as a one-off. He was in Doctors, a couple of episodes of that. He was in Heartbeat. He was in Holby City. I think that was in 2010. I think that might have been the last time he was on telly. So he's had a few roles, but I think he's enjoying his retirement at the moment, I assume.
Just like me.
Yeah. I was having a look around for a few interviews with him, and I couldn't find much. There was one interesting one where he was talking about his time on the street, and he was doing the usual thing of saying, back when we started we were able to rehearse for forever, and it was like a play, and by the time I left it was like no rehearsals. It was too difficult. I couldn't cope with 4 episodes a week. And he was also going on about the fact that lots of young actors weren't like they hadn't risen up through the ranks. They just were dropped into this show, and then they think they're the bee's knees and everything, and then crash and burn a bit. But he had a couple of good or funny quotes that I've copied down. He said, I didn't get many nasty letters. I did get letters saying it must be difficult living with Ivy, which it was for the character. And then this one, he's a quote about acting. In Coronation Street, you look at the script and you can play who you like, and really the street was set up originally with people playing who they were. They sort of did themselves, or did a character that they'd always done, and then the writers picked up on that and wrote what they liked about it. You have such a phase of development. Normally in TV, you did one and your character is set there. Over a period of 5 years, your character can change completely and radically. Mine did. People used to say that when you came in, you were nice and quiet. Now look at you.
Makes it sound like when they first met him, he was nice, and then gradually he turned into an actual psychopath. And the writer's like, oh, I'm really enjoying this character. Let's just ramp it up a bit.
Well, it's a bit like Alan Bradley, isn't it? Because he came in and I think he was quite nice at the beginning, and then they just decided
We need a villain.
Yeah, they needed a villain, and they said to Mark Eden, right, well, you're going to go after Rita now, and this is going to be a major storyline where you're going to go to kind of a Mr. Nice Guy to a notorious Corrie baddie. I wonder, do you think there's anybody else in Coronation Street at the moment that is a nice guy that could have the potential to turn villainous?
Who's not? Well, I mean, Todd was that, really personifies that recently, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does actually. Yeah, I just wonder whether there's anybody now like
Tyrone.
Yeah, the most unlikely ones would be like Tyrone becoming an evil
I can
murderer.
imagine Luke turning.
Can you?
Yes.
Why?
Because sometimes he does that little sneery face, which is supposed to be funny, but if he played that seriously, he would actually be quite sinister.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, they don't necessarily know what to do with Luke all the time, could they? So possibly, I wonder whether Andy could go back, because when Andy came in, he was a bit of a nasty guy, wasn't he? He was
Yes, he was.
taking
He was
on
being
Gavin's
horrible.
identity, and we certainly got to see some of his nasty side, but he's a bit more kind of bland and nice now, isn't he? So he could go down that route possibly. I don't know about any older characters. What do you think of, like, I don't know, Johnny? Do you think he could go bad?
Yeah.
Because
He already went a bit nasty when he went off on the factory girls or factory staff for watching that movie, and he wouldn't listen to reason about it, and he docked everyone's pay, and he was horrible about it, and he wouldn't listen to Jenny, and she was trying to reason with him and stuff.
I can imagine if the Corrie writers wanted to have young blood running the factory and putting Aidan in charge or whatever, that they could have Johnny, turn against the rest of the factory and like try and steal all its money or something, and then they have to evict him or something.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but some characters I don't want to turn bad because like them the way they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, there we go. There's Don Brennan. Brennan in German means to burn, and I think that's quite a nice.
I think they knew it all along.
I think that's quite an apt way, considering how
playing
this
the long
character
con.
died. Yeah, there must have been. That was the clue right from the beginning that we didn't see.
It was an Easter egg there for the pre-internet era.
Yeah, it's spelt differently as well, but
Well, who can spell
really,
German?
really
There's
secret Easter
Germans,
egg.
probably.
Dom was one of the characters who was a major-ish character when I started watching, so I suppose in that sense he's got a bit of a place in my Corrie heart. He obviously means nothing to you, but he was one of the first villains that I saw on Coronation Street, so I'll always remember him for that. But yeah, I guess he's not going to go properly down in Corrie history, but he had some good moments, and I think the driving Alma in the taxi is quite fondly remembered by fans, and the fact that he lost his foot makes him stand out, I suppose, from other characters. So got to make your mark, and that's how Don did. And that is it for him. So we are going to...
What about, you know how you said
No?
you wanted to have a character that comes in and they've got a disability or whatever, or they get a disability?
I want somebody to come in as not disabled and then have some horrible accident.
How about this then? How about somebody comes in and they had a foot amputated, and then they invent some kind of cool new technology to regrow their foot, and then they grow a foot back, and they're not limping anymore.
So coming into the show and they're limping, and then they can walk normally.
Yeah.
Nah.
And then maybe a gorilla pulls their face off.
That'd be okay. Yeah, they think they're okay,
but they're a gorilla.
They never suspected the gorilla.
That's chimpanzee.
They're all
Not
the
the same thing.
All the same.